Champions Mojo is part of the CG Sports Network.
Welcome to the award-winning Champions Mojo, hosted by two world record-holding athletes and health, life, and leadership coaches. Be inspired as you listen to Conversations with Champions. And now, your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And as usual, I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Hey, Maria.
Hey, Kelly. It's good to be here with you today.
Yes. And before we tell you all about our guest, Amanda Coker, we just want to say, hey, Amanda, welcome to Champions Mojo.
Hello.
Hey, Amanda.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, Maria and I are so excited to have you. I've been hearing about you, Amanda, for a long time. We've been trying to get you on the show. So it's really, so Amanda is one of the most decorated ultracyclists in the world. And even if you're a swimmer or another type of athlete, this story is so motivating. Amanda is best known for her 2017 highest annual mileage record, also known kind of by the cool acronym of HAMR, HAMR, when she rode her bicycle 86,573.2 miles in 365 days. So yes, folks, that is 237 miles, over 237 miles a day. She rode through hot, cold, hurricanes, wind, rain, and she smashed the previous HAMR record for men or women. But there's more, Maria. Tell us more about Amanda.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm such a big fan of Amanda's. In addition to Amanda's HAMR record, she owns 15 World Ultracycling Association sanctioned records, including, I'm just going to name a couple of them, the highest month mileage record where she cycled a mind-boggling 8,012.5 miles in a month. She owns the 100,000 mile record, which she did in 423 days. And in October of 2021, Amanda became the first woman to ride more than 500 miles solo in 24 hours. The solo means no drafting help from other cyclists. She rode 512.5 miles in 24 hours. And along the way, she broke 10 other women's cycling records and destroyed a couple of mine. So she's currently a member of the 2024 Women's Professional Cycling Team. Amanda's been riding bikes since she was a young girl. However, 11 years ago, she and her father were hit from behind while cycling, and both were severely injured. And that changed everything for Amanda. And it's a big part of her story, but we'd like Amanda to tell us about that. So Amanda, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Excited to be here and talk with you both.
So
Yes.
yeah, I'm just going to start and ask you about, your history and that accident. And then we can go from there.
The history starting with the accident.
Well, you can tell me your whole history, but
my whole history.
Well, I mean, you were a cyclist since you were a little girl. This has been your thing, right?
I started when I was 15.
Okay.
Some girls wanted their learner's permit. I wanted a road bike. I actually grew up with my dad being in triathlon, so I was always surrounded by the sport. And he's told me stories, and we have pictures of me riding on the back of his bicycle in one of those little baby carriage things. So I think that kind of started the love of cycling at a young age. And I didn't really get into it till I was 15 when I saw a triathlon in our neighborhood. I was like, oh, I want to try that. And so for my 15th birthday, my dad was like, okay, here's a aluminum frame road bike. Go have fun with it and see how you do on it. And I ended up doing pretty good in triathlons. And then I just started getting a little stronger with cycling. And so I kind of switched my focus over to cycling from that. And from there, I was able to obtain a cycling scholarship for my freshman year. And I ended up going to Fort Lewis College in Durango. But unfortunately, when I was out there, I discovered I had a hole in my heart called a PFO. And so though the way we believe we found it was from being at altitude, your oxygen is different from being at sea level. So it kind of opened it up, and it was deoxygenated blood was going with oxygenated blood. And so I had to leave college and come back home and have an implant put in my heart, which is successful it's been 11 years since that to this month. And so after that heart surgery, I started getting back into cycling and planning to go back to Fort Lewis that fall. And so on June 29th, 2011, my dad and I were out on a training ride, and a car just came up with no warning and just slammed right into us and threw us and off the side of the road into a ditch. And I ended up having a traumatic brain injury. I broke my left leg. My father and I both had substantial spinal injuries that both required surgeries later on. And we had a lot of litany issues. And we basically just had to start from new and go from there. And
You had to like
try to-
learn how to walk right? I mean, or
I had a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Side effects from the wreck, like especially my traumatic brain injury. It affected my speech, my memories, my thought process, just everything that a normal brain would function with. So things were hard for me to deal with emotionally and physically. So it was a pretty rough spat right after for a few years, until we all just my parents and I just looked at each other. We're like, we need to leave this area and just start new. And we moved down to Florida in 2014, and that's when I started getting back into riding again, and then just kind of went from there.
Well, so when you were doing, I wouldn't want you to talk about the night paralysis, because I know before we were on the air, you were talking, describe that's a side effect of your TBI, your traumatic brain injury.
Right. My one of the worst side effects of the traumatic brain injury was getting nighttime paralysis. The amount of trauma that I sustained from the wreck, I would be laying in bed at night for almost every single night after the wreck for several months, and I couldn't move. I knew I was awake, but my body just wouldn't move at all. And we tried different medications, and I said, I don't want to do medications. I just want to try and naturally heal this with time and proper hydration and sleep. But yeah, I still have them now, depending on a stressful situation, but they're rare. So it's a blessing.
So doing the hammer ride, that was part of your sort of self-treatment, wasn't it?
It really was. During my recovery right after, there was a chance that I thought, not a chance. I thought I would never be able to ride again, because my injuries were just so bad. And there was also the PTSD of riding on the road again, because if it happened once, it could happen again. And I had to deal with that. I just remember sitting in a recliner trying to think of ways I could motivate myself again. And I also started telling myself, if I ever could ride again, I was never going to take it for granted. So leading up to the hammer and having that opportunity presented to me, I was like, oh, I get to ride my bike every day for as long as I want. So it's not really a job. It's going to be fun. It's fun.
Did you, as you rode during hammer, were you getting better?
I decided to start at a slower pace. And the hammer, I started May 15th, 2016. So I started at like 18 and a half, 19 miles per hour, just so I wouldn't shock my body completely, because I knew it usually takes 2 weeks to set a routine just in general. So if I knew if it took the first 2 weeks moderately slower than what I normally train at, it wouldn't be such a shock to the system. So gradually my average pace just started creeping up, and ended up ending with 20.3 mile per hour average for the entire year.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. That's
Thanks.
incredible. I've had a little bit of cycling experience from being a triathlete, but that's just when you said you started out at 18 and 19, I'm like, okay, that's just like crazy fast for the average person on a bike. So I want to get the timeline right.
Right.
As far as what kind of cycling were you doing prior to the accident? How old were you when the accident happened? And did all these records and kind of ultra expansion into ultra come after the accident?
Before we got hit, I was mainly focusing on road racing. It was just crits and time trials and road races. I would do local races, and I actually got 6th place in the time trial the year prior at junior nationals. So that was kind of like my next step to the next level. And then I started training in college, but then I'd had to come home for my heart surgery, which kind of rebooted everything. But after my accident, I started just trying to ride more, and kind of by how feel and how my recovery was going. And I didn't really feel good enough to start really riding training again until about 2015. And we had already moved down to Florida by then from North Carolina. And one of our neighbors was like, you should go check out this place called Flatwoods. It's a closed course, 7-mile loop. It's safe from cars. You don't have to worry about anything other than animals and other cyclists and athletes. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And one of the most defining moments for me was I went out there after riding by myself, slowly trying to get fitness back. And I remember I came up on this one woman on the trail, and she was doing about 20-21 miles per hour. I was like, okay, I'm going to try and stick with this woman for as long as I can. So my heart was like at 160 beats per minute. And I'm not on her wheel, but I'm far enough back. She has no idea I'm behind her. And I ended up sticking behind her for the 3 laps she was doing. And she pulled off, and I pulled off behind her, panting and trying to just gather myself. And I said, oh, thank you so much. I needed that. You don't know how special it was for me. And she looked at me like I had 3 heads, like, who are you talking to me? So that's when I started thinking, okay, so if I could do that today, I can do it again tomorrow, and the next day and the next day. And that kind of just built the whole mindset for me that was helpful for me during the hammer, because the first day of the hammer was actually the furthest I had ever ridden in my life. So I was already starting off with that 250 miles and going, okay, if I do that today, I'm going to try and do it again tomorrow. So that's just how my mindset was to the entire hammer was, if I could do it yesterday, I could do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I think one of the
love
most
that mindset.
interesting things about you is your mindset, Amanda. We read that when you were a little girl or young, I mean, you said it was, we read that it was, you'd gone like 35 miles, and that was the longest you'd ridden. And your self-talk, can you talk about your self-talk during that ride when you were a young woman, a young girl, I guess, 15-year-old?
Probably when I was 15, like right after I'd gotten my bike. It was out up near Raleigh where we lived, and there was a little rolling course my dad and I would always race each other on. So he decided to take me on a little further course that day, which was about 35 miles, and it was hot North Carolina summer, and it was humid, and we were about 5 miles from home. I just started crying. I was like, Dad, I'm so tired. I just want to stop. He's like, no, don't stop. If you do this, you'll be proud of yourself, and you'll wake up tomorrow feeling great. And so crying in tears and sitting on his wheel all the way home when I finished, and it was like a burst of endorphins, like, oh, I did it. So I think that was the root ride that I remember, the core ride that I remember, where it's like, okay, so this is how cycling is going to be for me. I'm just going to keep setting these short goals on the way to the long-term goal.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I have so many questions, but I know you're definitely the cyclist here in the conversation. So when you set out to do the hammer, which is the ride that is averaging 237 miles a day.
200, yeah, that's right.
237 miles a day. Did you actually, is there a goal that says I have to do over that amount for 365 days? Did you actually set that goal, or did you just say, you know what, I'm going to see if I can do this for a month, and then I'm going to see if I can do it for 2 months? Or did you set out, I'm going to do this for a year?
My original goal was to just break the women's record, and the goal beside that was to ride as far as I could every day. I never wanted to do 237. I never had that as the goal. It was basically just how far can I ride between, let's say, 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. every day. But
you did intend to ride for a year, that you were going to.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone was like, you broke the women's record. Are you done? I'm like, no.
Well, what was the difference in the men's and women's record?
I believe 29,609 miles was the women's record by Billy Fleming. And the men's record was by Kurt, 76,076 miles.
So considerably different. So in your approach to this, So were you on the bike every day? Like, this is the schedule. I'm going to start at 7 and I'm going to finish at 8. And what was the miles per hour? And what were the injuries? Like, because, as adult athletes, Maria and I, like, swimming is a very forgiving sport, which is my sport. And I couldn't swim every day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I would be done injury wise in probably 2 weeks.
A general day was waking up about 4 o'clock in the morning. And mind you, my parents were there every day through the year. So they were also doing this whole process with me. I always joke they should get a little asterisk by all my records,
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
world
great.
record for most hours spent in a parking lot waiting on our crazy water to finish a crazy world record. So we would wake up at 4 a.m. Mom and dad would get breakfast ready and the car ready and the bikes ready. And we would load up and drive. We only live about 20 minutes from Flatwoods. So before even the record, people think we moved here for the hammer. No, we lived here and I was training at Flatwoods before the record. So we would drive to the neighborhood besides Flatwoods and I would ride in there until Flatwoods opened up at 7. And then I would ride at Flatwoods the entire time. And then if I wanted more miles, I would just go back into the neighborhood when the park closed. But a normal day would be waking up at 4, eating breakfast, loading up the car, going to the neighborhood, riding in there. And then dad would bring me bottles or food out on the course if I didn't want to come in. I usually would take about one stop every day, one long stop that's like 10 or 15 minutes long. And I would eat lunch. And I always hated doing that because I would have to, all the blood goes to your stomach and it's just like, oh, I got to go back out there and do another 100 and something miles with the full belly, but that would pass. And as the day would go on, friends who were already training would come out and ride with me. And it was funny because I had a group of guys that I used to train with before the hammer that were pretty fast. And they were like, oh, Amanda, we're not going to be able to ride with you because we don't want to ride that slow. And I was like, no, we're going to ride together. So I made it a point to just start training. I actually did intervals during the hammer. And I actually got a lot of QOMs out of Flatwoods for doing that. They would come out and I'd try to sit on their wheel and they would drop me. And then after time, I could hang with them and do their fast rides with them at 4 o'clock at night until I finished around 7 o'clock. And they were just like, you're so weird. So
that is insane.
A challenge within a challenge. And I would get flagged on Strava all the time because people were like, how is she going 27, 28 miles an hour getting QOMs while she's riding 200 something miles every day? So the people at Strava Corporation got to know me on a first name basis because I would have to like unflag all the flags.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were supported. That brings me to another question. You were supported not just by your parents, although your parents' support is incredible.
I'm so lucky. I won the lottery in the parent department.
But you were supported in other ways. Tell us about the support of the community and also sometimes not supported. Tell us about all that.
I made a lot of good friends while riding out at Flatwoods and they all just kind of came over with the hammer and it was pretty cool because what I was doing would motivate them to ride more and set more records. I mean, more personal bests and training goals. I had a bike sponsor and supply sponsor and fuel sponsors, but I never had any like monetary sponsors besides kind donations from people, which was really helpful because I ate a lot of food. That was for sure.
I'll bet.
And bike supplies are not cheap. Yeah. But one of the cool things we did was a friend of mine that rode with me, he made these boards for the 100 miles and 200 miles. So after a while, people were like, oh, Amanda, I want to come out and ride, but not ride with me, but ride on Flatwoods. I want to try and do 100 miles because I've never done it before. So they would come out and they'd get their goal. And one of my friends was like, oh, I'm going to take these boards. And every time somebody comes out here and rides 100 miles, they're going to write their name down and we'll take a picture. And I put it on my Facebook page to share their stories. And then someone who would ride 200 plus miles, we let them take a picture of that. And it just got really, that I still had the boards, but front and back, people just would come out and it was pretty cool to be a part of, to like ride by them on the course. And they're pushing it. It made me ride a little better. So
that's so amazing. So while you're doing this incredible thing, you're inspiring other people and giving them credit for it. That just blows my mind. It shows what a true champion you really are.
That's where like I developed a motto called "Inspiration is contagious" during the hammer. So that's, I put that on like all my stuff, is inspiration is contagious, because what they were doing inspired me to push myself beyond the point of, oh, I'm not feeling it today, but they're out here pushing for their personal best, what's hard for them. So what's going to keep me from doing it?
Yeah.
So how about the injuries and the dark times and the
yeah, tell us about the hard
and the
times.
negative talks?
Oh yes. Where would you like to start?
At the top.
Go dark.
Go dark.
Go dark. Yeah. Tell us.
I
about
mean,
the
no,
hard
I'm
times.
saying, well, what
She's
was the
saying,
hardest?
What were the dark moments
Yeah.
like? And what were they?
Some of the hardest days were the heat, riding in the heat, and the storms, waiting the storms out, just knowing that the storms were going to come around 1 or 2 o'clock every day, and just seeing those black clouds come through the skies, and having to do 2 summers of Florida summers, because I started in May, so I had to go all the way through that summer. And then when I went to the 100,000 miles, I had to go all the way through mid of July. It got pretty cold in the winter, down about 28 degrees, and those cold, wet, rainy days were probably the hardest for me personally, because I don't like the cold. You can't stay dry, and if you stop, you get stiff. So sometimes my mom and dad were like, you need to stop riding, you need to come warm up. I'm like, no, I don't want to. So I actually have some photos of me sitting in the car with my feet on the dashboard on the heaters and just eating donuts and hot chocolate. It's just trying to get warm. Some other moments. I did have crashes that other people caused, which were unfortunate. Probably cracked some ribs a few times. I still have some hematomas on each hip from crashing over. Luckily, I was on my recumbent for all of them, actually, except one. So the gravital pull down, I was closer to the ground. Whereas if I was on my upright, it probably would have been way more worse. Just I wouldn't say careless riders, but not as developed of skill riders. That's when I started using the no drafting sign, which people oddly took offense to. And when I tried to explain to them, I'm setting a world record. If you crash me, and it's over, So I only, after I had a wreck in that first July, and it was pretty bad. A guy got his back wheel stuck in my cassette. And so I just went boom, boom, like this on the ground. And after that, when I said, I don't want to ride with anybody I don't know. So it just became me and my close friends riding with me. So, and when I mean riding with friends, we would switch off. So I'm not just sitting on somebody's wheel all the time. We would take breaks. And I never asked my friends, hey, I need you to come out here and ride with me. They would come, because I didn't think that was fair. I didn't want to put that on my friends' shoulders. Oh, Amanda needs me, because they didn't sign up for the hammer. I didn't want to take the fun out of cycling for them. So I liked when they would come ride with me and keep me sane.
What about sorry, go ahead, Kelly, you ask.
What was the most you did in a day? Well, one day?
402 miles. The previous day, it was nasty weather. I think it was on day 409, and I was 125 miles. And I looked at my dad. I said, Dad, it's pouring rain. I'm not going to get 200 something today. Let's go home and fall asleep and get up at 10 and start at midnight and see how many miles I can get in today. So that was pretty crazy.
That is crazy. That almost breaks your 24-hour record. I mean, it's close to it.
It.
So
Yeah.
you also had some negative people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we don't have to major on that, but how did you overcome some of that? What was that? Where did that come from? And how did you kind of overcome that?
I think it came from the way it was hard for people to process what I was doing. Like, people had to make sense of something to believe it. They have to be able to process it in their brain. Okay, well, the only reason I'm going to be able to process that Amanda did this is so I can make an excuse of how she did it. Oh, she's riding on the flats. Oh, she's riding on a recumbent some of the time. Oh, she's riding with people. They had to make an excuse for it. And it would be on like my Strava and my Facebook. But what's funny is this did not upset me. It fueled me. So the more they did it, I was like, okay, bring it. Okay, I'll just ride harder. I'm just going to ride further. I'm just going to get another QOM. But I actually was like, okay, come bring the negativity. And I actually had a few men come out on the course and almost physically take me out on purpose because they were so displaced by what I was doing. One man, actually, I found out later on a blog that he wrote down on, he flew all the way from the UK and hid in the woods and watched me and didn't approach me or my parents just to see if I was actually doing it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, you know, pioneers like you, when Diana Nyad swam from Cuba to Florida, you know, she broke that record, and she had a lot of naysayers that were like, oh, she cheated. And it's like, how did she cheat? But some guy has a blog that just attacks her still to this day. So when when you're doing things that are amazing like that, you're going to have naysayers. So, but that really was hurtful, right? It so it fueled you, but did it cause you any, like to evaluate anything, or how did that motivate you?
It just motivated me, because it's like, I'm doing something that they can't wrap their head around. So it must be amazing. So I just continued to do it.
So that's what that was going to be my first question. When Maria, these are all great questions, so it doesn't really matter what order we ask them in. But when I look at your resume and what you've done, besides what I heard you wanted to heal, this was a way for you to heal from your accident, and you're motivated by these kind of naysayers. What else? Like, what is the motivation? Because a lot of us mortals, Maria is not a mortal, just to be clear.
No,
Maria is not immortal. Okay.
No,
I am immortal. My longest race is 20 minutes. I can get into plenty of pain in a mile of swimming, and that's plenty. But, what motivates you? Like this is some incredibly ultra stuff. So what is motivating you?
I think the root start to when it really started for me was when I was at the age of 12. I hit a maximum of 210 pounds. I was an obese preteen.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was hard for me growing up, because back then bullies, nowadays is not as bad, but bullies were terrible for me. I would wear baggy t-shirts. I'd wear my hair up. I wear shorts to cover the weight, and they would call me, it's a man, duh. They would chase me around, call me a boy. And that's when it really was for me, like, I need to do something about this. And so I started watching what I was eating. I started running when I got on, when I was a freshman in high school. I actually got down to about 140s, 150s, and I maintained that for a long time. And that was like the core. I gotta do something about this. I gotta come above these bullies. And that was probably when it started for me. And then during the hammer, all the hatred and the meanness just fueled me. But on top of that, I had the support of my friends and my family, which just kind of boosted that even higher. But back to why I did the hammer basically comes down to sitting in my recliner after the accident, just thinking I'm never going to be able to ride again. That's really how I push myself every day, especially on the worst weather days or the worst condition days. When I wanted to stop, I was thinking, if you stop, you're going to beat yourself up later, because you're selling yourself short of what you told yourself you were never going to do, and that is quit. So anytime my feet were freezing, or I had hot foot, or I was bleeding through my bandages after a wreck with somebody, or I was having a PTSD moment from my accident during the hammer, I would just kind of center myself and reevaluate the situation, and then just go, okay, this is why you're doing this. You're doing this to overcome everything you've done. So I hope that answers.
That's a beautiful speech. I want to just have a little bit of your brain in my brain. That's beautiful.
Right?
Gosh, I am, we've done almost 150 podcasts, and I don't think I've ever been moved to tears like that. That's really beautiful, Amanda.
It is. It is. You're an
It's hard to
amazing
talk
person.
about. So
It's really, really beautiful. And that authenticity is just stunning. And that will definitely be the lead in on this podcast. So, I mean, we always put a little snippet at the front and, well, that just really clears all this up for me because coming in here, I'm like, what is the motivation? But gosh, what great motivation. So this is, that is such a great reason, to do this. And so now you've done it. This is, you've done it. You've conquered the bully demons in your mind. You're this huge success. You're a celebrity and
Not yet.
No, I mean, in what's next and what does it feel like? Because a lot of our listeners and Maria and I, it's like, okay, we're kind of like, check that box, this and that. Maria set a world record. I was #1 in the world last year. And it's kind of like, oh, what do you do next? Like what's next for Amanda and how do you, reconcile this success?
Well, what's next for me? I always have my eyes on more ultracycling world records, like the 24-hour track, indoor and outdoor ones. She's going to write that down, isn't she?
Yeah. I also want you
Don't
to
enter this.
I want you to get the recumbent.
See, that's
records
another
too.
thing. A lot of people think, oh, well, she set that record. She's going to be mean if someone else breaks. I'm like, no, I want more women to break these records because what's going to happen is it's going to build the community.
That's right.
And it's going to set the bar higher and higher. And then it's going to bring more eyes on women's cycling, which is what we need. Regardless of ultracycling, road cycling, mountain biking, we need more eyes on women's sports, women's cycling, because there's women out there who beat the men. So we are stronger for certain things. And I want somebody to come along and break my record because then I can go back out and break it again. I'll like, if someone comes up to me and says, Amanda, I'm going to break your 24-hour record. I'm like, go for it.
Yeah.
I'll be like, do it. Because then you're just going to show that women are that strong. Women are that motivated and that determined to do it. So, and then I'll just go out and go for it again.
Yeah. I love that. I love that attitude.
No, you should never be hateful towards someone who's breaking a record of yours, because that just shows progress in human development, research, motivation, because then they're going to inspire somebody else. You want that. You don't want it to be stagnant.
Yeah. Amanda, we love to know, you've really given us, I think, a great insight into sort of the way your mind works. And it's really incredible and beautiful and well developed for a champion. But I'd also wonder, do you have any routines or rituals that you think help make you as successful as you are?
I like to set short-term goals on the road to a long-term, because the way I always tell people is, if you're going to do a marathon for the first time, you're not going to go out and do a 10-mile run your first day. You're going to go for some walks. You're going to gradually add in a mile, and then you're going to build up to a 5K and so forth. Because if you just go into the mindset, I have to do a marathon, you're going to struggle along the way there. You need micro goals along the way and you must celebrate those goals too, because you're your biggest cheerleader. I mean, you could have the Ricky Coker and Donna Coker parents, but it still comes down to Amanda Coker, who's going to motivate herself to hit that big goal. So
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Okay. Well, I know I want to tell a little story because I think it shines a light on who you are too. We were together at the Sebring 1224 race, and I was doing the 12-hour, and we chatted before the race. And Amanda is a coach. And we'll talk about that more later, but at the starting line, I had trained for it, but not particularly intentionally or thoughtfully, the 12-hour. And you said, what's your goal? What's your goal? I'm like, what did I say? I want to get over 200 miles. And you kind of rolled your eyes and get, come on, Maria. And, and I think I said, yeah, well, if I could do 240, I'd be delighted. But I was very flattered that you what took that moment to inspire me and hold me accountable, since I was entering a 12-hour race anyway. And B, to have in my mind, I told Amanda I'm going to do 240 miles. I can't give up here. So what clearly your ability to motivate yourself and others is a quality of a champion. What other commonalities do you think champions share?
The behind the scenes, because when say that someone does a podcast or an article or interview, you're only seeing that because of a successful moment, like riding 512 miles in 24 hours. You don't get to see the days of sitting on the trainer with your legs just broken. You can't even get the workout in. You're struggling with that mentally, like, oh, I'm not going to get the work in today because I don't feel good. Or another day where your body's just flat and you can't do anything regardless of working out. Or if you have personal issues going on, nobody sees the struggles and the highs and lows while getting to that successful point. And I feel like champions all can relate to each other going to that point. We all know to get here, we had to go through all the rocky roads along the way. So I think that's how champions can relate to each other.
That's great.
That's beautiful. That's a great answer. So what do you do for balance? Like you're obviously motivated to do this. How do you balance your life with these amazing, ambitious goals?
Time in between, you mean? Or
yeah, just like, is there another thing that you do besides cycling?
I'm a cycling coach. That takes up a lot of my time.
Okay. So tell us about that. Like that must be a equal passion, or
it really is.
Yeah.
I have athletes from all over the world. I started coaching in October 2020. I started Amanda Coker Coaching, AC Coaching, however people want to say it. It's really, really rewarding, and it motivates me to push myself into training, because one of my biggest things with my athletes is I'm always telling them, you have to have fun, because I know I'm your coach and we're gonna push you past the point that you've never hit before, but don't forget why you started riding is because you were having fun, because you did it as a release and escape, emotional and physical balance. And so that I try to keep that with my athletes all the time. And we have hard days, and the next day I want you to have fun and take it easy. Actually, I had an athlete at Sebring this year who did the 24-hour race, and he had never broken 400 miles before. And I said, okay, you're gonna break it then. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yes. He ended up doing 428 miles.
Wow.
And the whole time he's just like grinning and having fun. I'm like, he's a machine. But it's so cool to actually be there and see the athlete performing at their best. And it kind of gives me the adrenaline rush, endorphin highs, whatever you want to call it, to push myself into training. So it's kind of another inspiration is contagious kind of thing.
Are you taking more clients?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can't have too many.
I can attest to that little tiny bit of coaching you did with me, that you're a
good.
great coach, and just listening
Thank
to you.
you.
So if someone's listening and they, they're not going to try to go out and set a hammer record, maybe they just want to enter their first triathlon and they've never even been on the bike. But they know they've got to get on a bike. And what advice would you give to just kind of, the weekend warrior that really has always wanted to get into cycling? What advice would you give to them?
Just go out and have fun. Just set a goal. Like, I'm going to sprint as hard as I can to this post right here and see if you can break it again the next time you try it. Or if you're at like Flatwoods kind of place, do a lap and as hard as you can. And then another day, try to do it again and try to beat your best. Just always try to strive to be better than you were the last time, and always have fun. Even if you're standing on the side of the road, try not to blow your guts from puking and pushing so hard.
I want to also just ask, I think a lot of people struggle with weight issues, and to know that you sort of overcame that. Do you have just a quick little bit of advice for anybody out there who just feels really overwhelmed by, feeling fat?
Don't beat yourself up if you're eating bad one day. It's not going to ruin the rest of your life. Just drink lots of water, get daily fruits and vegetables and protein. Don't starve yourself, because that's just going to mess up your metabolism. I mean, I'm not a nutrition coach, licensed coach, but just listen to your body. What is your body asking for? Is it asking for more water, rest? You can really, if you listen to your body, you'll be able to figure out what you need.
Yeah, that's great advice. Don't let
Go
what?
ahead. Don't let the bullies get to you, because they're compensating for something else that they're not happy with.
Yeah,
Which
and
that
bullies
took
are
a lot of
yeah.
years to figure out.
Yeah.
And bullies are everywhere. They're not just in high school. You know,
Unfortunately.
they're
No.
Well, this has been so wonderful. Is there anything that we have not asked you, Amanda, that you would like to share with our with us?
I can share anything about the records if you have questions, any
Um,
insights you want. It all comes down to, if you ask the question, I'll come up with an answer.
Did you want to talk about your cycling team at all?
I'm on 20 Virginia Blue Ridge 2024 women's pro cycling team. I've been on there since July of 2018, and it's a very wonderful team of juniors and pro women all across all kinds of disciplines and different fields. It's a great team.
They support you pretty well, huh? As
Mhm.
well.
That's awesome. Well, we will put all your information in our show notes if people want to find you to get part of your coaching, to be part of Amanda Coker coaching. But thank you so much. This has been fabulous. We've really, it's been so inspirational.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really, really awesome. So thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. I've wanted you on the show for a long time. I really appreciate you making time for us. And you're just an inspiration to me and to everyone.
It's nice
So-
to talk to two very wonderful women who just are amazing for women athletes.
Well, thanks, Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll be cheering for you.
We sure will.
Aw.
Take care. Hang in there.
We hear that you love Kelly and Maria's takeaways from each episode. Well, now they'll be called Best Ofs, and you can catch them in a short micropod every week following a full podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, which is produced by Cobra Media.